This is a story about power. The kind that wears a badge. And the kind that gets pulled over for driving while black. If you think justice always shows up on time, you're about to get dragged into the kind of truth they don't print on morning headlines. It was a quiet stretch of road, Highway 612, just outside Stafford County. The kind of place folks forgot existed unless they were lost or looking for someone who didn't belong. The moon hung low and yellow in the sky, like a tired eye watching the same old story unfold again. Dr. Lenora Graves had just left a federal courthouse in Richmond after a 16-hour day. She didn't complain. She was used to long days and longer nights. That's what it took to put criminals behind bars, especially the ones hiding in uniforms. She drove a black Tesla Model S. Quiet, smooth, state-issued. The kind of car people noticed when a black woman was behind the wheel. At exactly 12:17 a.m., flashing red and blue lights filled her rearview mirror. She checked her speed. 45 in a 45. No weaving. No broken light. Nothing. Still, she pulled over. She put the car in park, turned on the cabin light, and kept both hands on the steering wheel. She taught seminars at Quantico on exactly what to do in this situation. The difference now? She was living it. The officer approached slowly, as if she were dangerous. He kept his hand near his gun like it had a mind of its own. A flashlight beamed through her window before he said a word. "License and registration," he snapped. Lenora didn't move. "Evening, officer," she said, calm but clear. "May I ask the reason for the stop?" "No, you may not." "Step out of the vehicle." His badge read D. Daniels. White male. Late 30s. Big belt, small brain. The type who treated a badge like a crown and a gun like a hammer. Everything looked like a nail. "I will comply," Lenora said. "But I'm reaching for my credentials now." Slowly, from her side bag, she retrieved a leather wallet and slid out a federal ID and a gleaming gold badge. Dr. Lenora Graves, Senior Prosecutor, U.S. Department of Justice. Daniels glanced at the badge but didn't take it. He leaned in, squinted, then chuckled. "Federal, huh? You people always got some story." "You people?" she asked, arching one brow. "You know what I meant." "Yes," she said coldly. "Unfortunately, I do." Then, without warning, he slammed both hands on the hood of her Tesla. The metal rang out in the stillness. Her body went rigid, but she didn't flinch. That's what he wanted. "I set out." Her voice dropped to ice. "You are violating federal protocol." "Oh, you're one of those." His lip curled. Before she could speak, another voice rang out from behind the police cruiser. "I'm recording this. Don't touch her." Daniels froze. Lenora didn't smile. She didn't blink. She just exhaled, slow and steady. Because now he wasn't just wrong. He was being watched. And in 2 minutes, he'd regret ever pulling that trigger-happy ego into her lane. Officer Daniels didn't lower his weapon. He didn't back away. He didn't even blink. What he did was classic. He squared his shoulders like he'd just found a reason to be a hero in his own cheap movie. The kind where the good guy always has a badge, the villain always has brown skin, and the truth gets left on the cutting room floor. Except this wasn't his movie. And Lenora Graves wasn't here for supporting roles. "Put your phone down," Daniels shouted, pointing his gun not at Lenora now, but toward the man filming from the roadside. The man didn't budge. "It's live, genius. You shoot, and the whole world watches you destroy your career in 1080p. Daniels hesitated. You could almost hear his brain creaking under the weight of a new concept. Accountability. Lenora, still inside the car, hadn't moved. Not because she was scared, but because she was calculating. Her hands were still on the wheel. Her breathing was slow. Her eyes were unblinking. But her voice is as sharp as ever. "Officer Daniels," she said, each syllable like a warning bell. "You are aiming a loaded firearm at a federal employee who has identified herself. That is not a mistake. That is a felony. Get out of the car," he shouted again. But now his voice had lost that smug edge. Cracked. Just a little. "On what grounds?" she asked, still not moving. He didn't answer, because he didn't have one. And now, for the first time, he knew it. Behind him, a second patrol cruiser pulled up. Another officer stepped out, tall, heavy-set, chewing gum like it was his only personality trait. No nameplate, no courtesy, just back like this was a bar fight and not a legal incident. "Problem here?" the second officer asked. "She's resisting," Daniels said too quickly. "I'm not," Lenora replied. "I'm asking for protocol." The second officer didn't care. "Ma'am, step out." She tilted her head. "It's doctor, not ma'am. And this," she gestured to her badge still visible on her lap, "is what you're violating." Daniel's face flushed red. "You people always make it harder than it needs to be." And there it was again, "you people." Those two words say everything about the person saying them. He reached for the door handle. That's when the man filming shouted again. "Hey, touch that door, and you're going to be explaining this to CNN tomorrow morning." Lenora finally moved. She unbuckled her seatbelt. Slowly. Then she opened the door on her own terms. She stood up. Straight, tall, unshaken. And what she said next cut through the night like a razor. "You just made a very stupid decision, Officer Daniels. And trust me, I prosecute stupid decisions for a living." By the time Lenora stood fully outside her car, you could feel it, that shift in the air. The confidence Daniels had swaggered in with, gone. It evaporated the second she stepped out like she owned the highway. Because, in a way, she did. The second officer, still chewing gum like it owed him rent money, moved in behind Daniels. Neither looked at her badge. Neither asked who she was. They had already decided. And that's what made them dangerous. "I'm asking you to place your hands behind your back," Daniels said, voice shaking under the weight of his own mistake. "For what charge?" Lenora asked flatly. Daniels blinked, stuttered, glanced at the other officer. "Failure to comply," he muttered. "You mean failure to surrender my civil rights?" She shot back. That's when Daniels reached for his cuffs, and when Lenora pulled her final card. She turned, slowly, deliberately, and faced the camera phone still recording from the side of the road. "My name is Dr. Lenora Graves," she said, voice cutting through the night. "I am a senior federal prosecutor with the United States Department of Justice. This officer is unlawfully detaining me without cause." He drew his weapon and ignored my identification. "Everything you're seeing is a violation of federal procedure." Daniels froze mid-step, because this wasn't just some cell phone video anymore. This was a statement for the record, and it was going to bury him. From the road behind them, more headlights appeared fast. Another patrol unit. Then another. Someone had called for backup. The problem was that they didn't know who the real threat was yet. One of the newly arrived officers stepped out. Female, Latino, calm eyes, clean uniform, and a radio still crackling on her shoulder. "Status report?" she asked, walking up to the scene like a teacher catching two kids fighting in the hallway. Daniels started. "Subject refused to exit vehicle. Presented fake federal ID. She's DOJ," the officer interrupted, eyes now fixed on Lenora's badge. "That's not fake. I recognize that clearance level. You pulled over a federal prosecutor." The silence hit like a freight train. Daniel opened his mouth, but no words came out. The gum-chewing backup officer stepped back like the smell of liability had just reached his nostrils. Lenora didn't move. She didn't smile. But the look on her face was pure steel. That's when the Latina officer clicked her radio. "Dispatch, I need internal affairs at this location. Possible misconduct involving armed threat against a federal official." Daniels went pale. His voice cracked as he looked around, desperate for someone to bail him out. But Lenora didn't give him the chance. She stepped forward, eyes locked on his. "You pulled a gun on a federal prosecutor, Officer Daniels," she said. "And now you're going to learn what consequences actually feel like." Officer Daniels tried to talk, but the words came out like bad excuses and old chewing gum. Sticky, stale, and useless. "Wait. She didn't say." "Oh," she said. The Latina officer cut in. Her name tag read Sergeant Rosa Jimenez, and the look on her face said she'd seen enough dirty stops to know when the stink was fresh. "Sir," she continued, "you aimed a loaded weapon at a federal official, denied her identity, ignored protocol, and now Internal Affairs is en route. The only thing you should be doing is sitting on the curb and praying your pension survives the night." Daniel's jaw worked like he was chewing air. The man with the phone, Marcus, according to his hoodie, was still recording, still broadcasting. Comments streamed across the screen like wildfire. "Is this real? Dude's done. Respect to that woman. Justice wearing heels tonight. And Lenora?" She still hadn't raised her voice. She didn't need to. Her presence did the talking. Her silence screamed louder than a siren. She turned to Sergeant Jimenez. "I'll need all dashcam and bodycam footage preserved. Immediately. No edits. No delays." "Yes, ma'am." Jimenez nodded. "Already on it." The gum-chewing backup officer, now suddenly quiet, backed away and started fiddling with his radio like it might help him disappear. 2 more cruisers arrived. Then a black SUV. Not local cops this time. Federal plates. Now the room was getting crowded. Out stepped Special Agent Calvin Price, a man built like a retired linebacker and dressed in a federal windbreaker that only came out for major screw-ups. He looked at Lenora, then Daniels, then back again. "Oh, hell," he muttered under his breath. "I told them this district was a ticking bomb." "You were right," Lenora said, arms folded. "And tonight, it exploded." Price turned to Jimenez. "Who's in command here?" "I am, sir." "Good. I need you to separate all officers involved. Confiscate weapons, radios, everything. Until IA gets here, no one moves an inch." Daniels finally snapped. "You can't do this." She was being aggressive. "She questioned me." "She spoke," Lenora corrected. "And your ego mistook that for defiance. She didn't belong on that road at midnight." Silence. That line hung in the air like smoke from a burning cross. Calvin Price turned slowly. "Say that again." Daniels opened his mouth. But this time nothing came out, because even he realized he'd said the quiet part loud. "You just explained everything," Lenora said. Her voice was level. Her eyes lit with fire. "You didn't stop me because I broke the law. You stopped me because I broke your illusion that a black woman driving a nicer car than yours must be out of place." The second Daniels was cuffed. Yes, cuffed. By one of the new arriving feds. The crowd that had gathered across the highway clapped. Not for violence. Not for revenge. But, Ben Ali, someone with power, wasn't above the rules. And this time, the badge wasn't the shield. It was the evidence. By 2:30 a.m., the shoulder of Highway 612 looked like a bad episode of Law and Order if it had been directed by someone who hated racism and had zero patience for stupidity. Daniels sat in the back of a federal cruiser, red-faced and steaming like a bag of bad meat left in the sun. His backup officer, now known as Officer I Just Follow Orders, leaned against a nearby guardrail, chewing invisible gum and avoiding all eye contact like a guilty Labrador. Lenora stood in the middle of it all, poised, precise, her coat still crisp, her badge still visible, and her patience nearly gone. That's when Captain Alan Briggs arrived. Unmarked car, loud engine, and a face like someone who thought just being white, tired, and in charge meant he could clean up any mess. He got out of the car, adjusted his belt like that was going to make him taller, and walked up with all the charm of a wet cigarette. "All right, let's get this sorted," he said. Waving his hand like this was a parking violation and not a federal incident. Lenora turned her head slowly, like a lioness spotting a very small, very loud hyena. "And you are Captain Briggs, Stafford County PD." "Ah," she said. "So you're the head of the leaking faucet." Briggs stiffened. "Excuse me? You should be," Lenora replied. "But I'm guessing you're not." He looked around, clearly thrown off by how many federal agents were now circling like sharks at a buffet. "We don't need to make this bigger than it is." "It already is, Captain," said Special Agent Price, stepping in. "And it's about to get worse." Briggs took a breath. "Look, Daniels is a good cop. He made a mistake. It was late, tense. He misread the situation. Lenora raised an eyebrow so sharp it could have sliced a watermelon. He misread a federal badge? He was under pressure, Briggs continued, tones sliding toward pleading. He didn't know who she was. That's the point, she snapped, finally letting some heat into her voice. He didn't care who I was, because to him, I was just another black woman out of place. Briggs tried the last trick in the handbook. Deflect and downplay. Let's all calm down, he said. We're on the same side. Lenora stepped in close. Captain, the only side I'm on is the side of the law. You remember law, don't you? It's that thing you swore to uphold before you turned it into a suggestion. Briggs clenched his jaw. Are you accusing me of something? Not yet, Lenora said coldly. But I'm warming up. Behind her, Agent Price's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, then turned to Lenora. Internal Affairs just confirmed. Danielle's body cam was turned off. Briggs looked away. Lenora smiled, but it wasn't friendly. Well, she said, isn't that just conveniently criminal? Back at the Stafford County precinct, the walls weren't sweating yet, but they would. By 5 a.m., Lenora Graves was seated in the briefing room, a cup of bad coffee untouched beside her, as screens flickered with footage, names, and complaint logs that hadn't seen daylight in years. Special Agent Price stood across from her, arms folded, face unreadable. This isn't about one cop anymore, he said. It's a pattern. Oh, I know, Lenora replied. I'm just surprised the pattern has a filing cabinet and a pension plan. Rosa Jimenez entered the room with a flash drive and a look that said we're about to break something important. I pulled internal records like you asked, she said. And you're going to want to see this. The screen lit up with Danielle's personnel file for prior complaints. 2 for excessive force. 1 was for misconduct during a traffic stop involving a minor. All dismissed. All signed off by Captain Briggs. Price squinted at the timestamps. That's not a coincidence. That's cover. Lenora didn't blink. That's policy. Jimenez clicked again. A new screen. This time it was a department-wide memo dated 2 years earlier. Officers are encouraged to remain firm during late-night stops involving potential threats. Non-compliance is grounds for escalation. Potential threats. Lenora leaned forward. Do you know what that's code for? Price sighed. Anyone who doesn't look like they belong. And who decides who belongs? She asked, though the question was rhetorical. Another file popped up. Officer Joseph Wren. Suspended 6 months earlier for turning in his partner over a falsified arrest report. He was quietly let go. No formal review. No press. They fire the ones who speak, Jimenez said, and promote the ones who stay quiet. Lenora stood. Then it's time we stop whispering. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. You don't know how deep this goes. Back off. She showed it to Price. They're starting to sweat. He nodded. Good. That means we're getting close. Lenora turned back to the screen. I want every bodycam file from the last 3 years pulled and preserved. Cross-check it with arrest records, especially involving Black or Latino drivers. Look for gaps. Deleted footage. Any officer with a missing tape gets flagged. Jimenez hesitated. Ma'am, that could be over 1,000 hours of video. Then I suggest we start now. She walked to the window and looked out at the gray light of dawn breaking over a building that had spent decades hiding behind procedure and plausible deniability. There's a reason Daniels thought he could get away with it, she said. Because people like Briggs taught him he could. Price stepped up beside her. You think Briggs is the top of the ladder? Lenora's smile was razor-thin. No, I think he's the doorman. The real players? They're upstairs sipping coffee, thinking the storm will pass. She turned to face them both. Let's knock. The elevator ride to the 7th floor of the Stafford County Justice Complex was unusually slow. Not because of mechanical issues, because truth always takes the long way up. Lenora stood inside the mirrored box, arms crossed, expression carved from stone. She wasn't alone. Flanking her were Special Agent Price and Sergeant Jimenez, both quiet, both armed, not just with weapons, but with facts that could destroy careers. They weren't going to a meeting. They were going to a reckoning. At the top floor, they were greeted by the bland beige of municipal power. Thin carpet, thicker doors, and plaques with names of men who believed titles were armor. Secretary Dana Westbrook, Chief Legal Advisor to the county. Gerald Knox, Internal Affairs Commander. And, unsurprisingly, Captain Briggs. Again, they were already seated around the conference table. Sipping coffee from matching mugs like this was a fundraiser brunch and not the prelude to a federal investigation. Lenora didn't sit. "Let's begin," Westbrook offered, adjusting his tie like a man who still believed he was in charge. Lenora opened her folder and dropped 4 glossy prints on the table. Each showed a different face, Black or Latino, each accompanied by a timestamp, a badge number, and a missing footage report. No one spoke. She leaned forward slightly. "These are the people your officers pulled over, questioned, detained, sometimes charged, sometimes not, but always without footage." Knox cleared his throat. "We don't control body cam malfunctions, Deputy Director." "That's funny," Lenora said coolly, "because these malfunctions only seem to happen after sunset and before paperwork." A strange little window. Briggs tried the old playbook again. "You're looking for racism where there's only routine." "Oh, Captain," she replied with surgical precision. "If this is routine, then the routine is rotten." Westbrook tried to pivot. "This department has served the county with pride. And sealed settlements," she cut in. "Over 40 complaints in 5 years. Most are dismissed without investigation. All were connected to officers with perfect promotion records. You think I wouldn't notice that?" Knox finally snapped. "You're politicizing standard law enforcement." "No," she said, voice dropping low and cold. "I'm prosecuting it." Price placed a laptop on the table and played an audio file. A male voice, angry, familiar. "She's DOJ? Doesn't matter. She'll shut up if she knows what's good for her." Briggs went pale. Westbrook asked, "Where did you get that?" Lenora smiled, thin, sharp. "Turns out your precinct janitor didn't just mop floors. He recorded every locker room pep talk for 3 years." She leaned forward, her voice now ice-wrapped in velvet. "Now I'll ask this once. Give me every name tied to body cam suppression, every officer involved in falsifying reports, and every superior who signed off on it." Silence. Then she added, "Or I'll see you all in federal court, on camera, in handcuffs, and under oath." The silence in the room didn't last long. It never does when guilt starts crawling up someone's spine. Captain Briggs shifted in his seat like his uniform had suddenly shrunk 3 sizes. Westbrook avoided eye contact completely, his mug of coffee now trembling slightly in his soft, manicured hand. "Knox," he folded his arms like a teenager caught cheating on a test, daring anyone to call it out loud. Lenora didn't blink. She just let the quiet stretch, taut as piano wire, while that little recording looped once more. "She's DOJ? Doesn't matter. She'll shut up if she knows what's good for her." Finally, someone cracked. Not Briggs. He was too arrogant. Not Westbrook. He was too polished. It was Knox, the Internal Affairs Commander, the man tasked with investigating misconduct, who now looked like he'd swallowed a thumbtack. "I didn't authorize that culture," he said, almost defensively. Lenora raised an eyebrow. "Culture? You mean the one that silences whistleblowers and protects violent officers like they're endangered species?" Price added. "Or the one where cameras malfunction the moment someone darker than khaki gets pulled over?" Knox swallowed hard. "I didn't start it," he muttered. "But I may have let some things slide." "Oh," Lenora replied, her voice dipped in poison. "And what exactly slid, Commander? The laws or your spine?" Briggs snapped. "You don't get to come in here and speak to us like—" "I'll speak to you," Lenora said, cutting him off without raising her voice. "The way you spoke to every citizen who didn't have a badge to protect them." Then she turned to Knox. "This is your only moment. You either tell me what you know now, or you get dragged down with them when this hits court. And trust me, it will hit like a wrecking ball dipped in subpoenas." Knox looked at her. Really looked. And he knew. She wasn't bluffing. The body cam suppressions, he started, voice dry. They weren't random. There's a list. Lenora didn't flinch. Go on. Knox leaned forward like a man peeling off his own skin. Names marked for enhanced monitoring. It was unofficial, verbal orders passed around by captains, usually based on street profiling. Daniels was one of the worst. So was Briggs' protege, Officer Rhett Monroe. Lenora's eyes narrowed. Any connection to juvenile arrests? Knox hesitated. Yes, we kept some cases off the books. Said they were sealed, but really they never existed on paper. Price cursed under his breath. That's federal obstruction. It's worse, Lenora said quietly. It's erasure of lives. Briggs shot up. This is insane. He's just trying to save himself. Knox turned slowly toward him. Maybe, but I'm not going to prison for your mess. Alan, do you think I'm going down for Daniels? You think I don't know what happened to Jamal Evers in that holding cell you lost the key to? The room froze. Even the air gave up pretending. Lenora smiled, small, cold, and final. There it is. She turned to Price. Put him in protection. We flip him. He talks. We tear this place apart from the inside out. Then, she looked at Briggs, who now had the color of curdled milk. And as for you, she said, walking to the door, tell your lawyer to bring an extra pen. He's going to need it when we start counting the bodies on your payroll. The folder landed on the metal table with a soft thud, but its contents hit like a grenade. Dozens of intake forms from juvenile facilities across 3 counties. Names, dates of arrest, charges that didn't make sense, and in some cases no charges at all. Just vague phrases like protective custody, transferred for reevaluation, or the most chilling of all, not applicable. Where are they now? Lenora asked, her voice sharp but low. Special Agent Price looked at the files again. Most were never formally released. No record of transfer. No signatures. No parents contacted. And no official death certificates, added Jimenez, flipping through one of the files. Just blank space. Lenora leaned back in her chair. Let me guess. All boys of color. All poor. All disappeared. Price nodded. And all from the same 5 precincts. Each tied to the same oversight coordinator. Lenora's eyes darkened. Who? Price hesitated. Then turned the last page. Regional Director Malcolm Trent. DOJ Youth Rehabilitation Division. Of course, Lenora whispered. The one place no one thinks to look. The department pretending to save them. That afternoon, she walked into Trent's office unannounced. Washington, D.C. skyline behind him. A glass of whiskey in his hand, and a smirk on his face that should have been arrested by itself. Well, if it isn't the storm from Stafford, he said, standing but not offering a handshake. I heard you've been stirring up some drama down south. Lenora didn't sit. You've been ghosting children. Trent laughed. That's a hell of an accusation, Deputy Director. No, she said. It's a fact. And I've got more than accusations. I have names, paper trails, audio, a flipped internal affairs commander. I even have a janitor with better ethics than your whole damn division. He sipped his drink like she'd just complimented his tie. You know how this works, he said smoothly. Some kids fall through the cracks. No, Lenora snapped. You built the cracks, and you're not losing kids. You're erasing them. You're turning poverty into policy and calling it reform. He dropped the smile, just for a second. Then, you have no jurisdiction over me. Lenora pulled a USB drive from her coat pocket and dropped it on his desk. Then explain why your voice is on this tape. Coordinating with Captain Briggs to suppress juvenile records in exchange for federal grants. Trent's face dropped like a curtain at the end of a bad play. This goes public, she said. You won't just lose your position. You'll need immunity just to keep your name out of the human trafficking docket. I can bury this, he whispered. And I can bury you, she said. But I'd rather exhume every piece of this system, put it on the front page, and let America see what happens when men like you treat black lives like expendable data. Trent didn't respond. She didn't wait for him to. She walked out, past the secretary who had stopped typing, past the security guards who suddenly stood straighter. And as the elevator doors closed behind her, Lenora said just loud enough for the air to remember, "Justice isn't coming. It's already here." A week later, the steps of the U.S. Department of Justice weren't just marble. They were a stage. Not for a press conference. For a reckoning. Lenora Graves stood at the podium, not in tears, not trembling, not asking for empathy, but issuing a national warning. She wore no makeup, no pearls. Just a black blazer and the weight of everything she'd uncovered. Behind her stood Marcus Thomas, the young man who dared to film a cop with a gun. Next to him was Jamal Evers, the boy who was never supposed to be found. Alive, breathing, holding the microphone like it weighed more than it should. The crowd was silent. The press had gone from murmuring to holding their breath. Lenora looked straight into the cameras. "You want a number?" she said. "I don't have one. I don't know how many kids were taken. How many never came home. How many were erased like they never mattered." A pause. "I don't know. And that's the problem." Behind her, headlines were already splashing across every screen in the nation. DOJ indicts 17 in juvenile disappearance ring. Youth Division head Malcolm Trent faces federal racketeering charges. Whistleblower Marcus Thomas awarded Civil Courage Medal. Justice Department to audit all juvenile detentions nationwide. Lenora kept going. "This isn't a celebration. This is a confession that we let the wrong people write the rules. That we handed power to men who didn't believe some lives were worth protecting." Her eyes found the main camera live, national feed. "And if you're watching this, shaking your head, thinking this isn't my fight, then I have bad news for you." She leaned in. "You are the problem." No applause followed. Just silence. The kind of silence that stings. Because for once, nobody was being entertained, they were being called out. Back at her office, Lenora returned to her desk. The inbox was flooded. Agents, lawyers, reporters, victims. But one envelope sat alone. No return address. No government seal. Inside was a single note. "Keep going. I'm not the only one. Derek Sims." Lenora sat quietly, then opened her laptop. A new folder. A new case. A new file already forming like smoke before fire. No victory speech. No champagne. Just the familiar sound of keys tapping. Truth building. Brick by brick. Body by body. Somewhere down the hall, someone turned on a TV. A pundit was already spinning the story. Debating it. Diluting it. Lenora didn't hear it. Because justice doesn't care about noise. It lives in action. In courage. In people who won't shut up even when they're told to. She whispered to herself, "Justice isn't a moment. It's a war. And I'm not done." Some stories are meant to entertain. This one was meant to interrupt. To remind you that justice doesn't always come with sirens. Sometimes it comes with silence. Sometimes it drives a Tesla and teaches the law to the men who think they are above it. If this story made you feel something, anger, hope, disgust, or fire in your chest, don't scroll past it. Share it. Talk about it. Question everything. Because injustice survives on silence. And right now, too many people are still whispering. Subscribe to Story Precious. We don't just tell stories. We expose what they tried to bury.